My name is Octavian Caisobiada. I'm a Romanian apologist, currently living in upstate New York. I'm a retired nurse practitioner, doctor of nurse practice, and I teach apologetics at VAXA Institute of Apologetics and the Romanian Baptist Theological Institute in Bucharest. And my work focuses on Christian theology, philosophy, and apologetics, with a particular interest in the relationship between the divine sovereignty, human freedom, and the intellectual defense of the Christian faith, as well as the probability of the intelligent design that is God. Now, in the third volume that just came up, and it was a work in process for the past 3 years, and this one, Freedom Before God series, titled The Divine Attributes That Make Freedom Possible, I aim to go deeper than the standard debate over the free will and predestination. While the first two volumes established the metaphysical foundation of the classical theism and explored the major theological models of sovereignty and freedom, this volume asks a more fundamental question: what kind of God must exist for freedom to be genuinely possible? And I wrote this book out of the conviction that many modern discussion about freedom begins in the wrong direction. Contemporary culture often starts with human anatomy and the attempts to adapt God to that definition of freedom. Now, in this volume, I attempt to reverse the order of reasoning. God precedes reality, and reality precedes freedom. If the nature of God is misunderstood, human freedom will be inevitably misunderstood as well. And the first part of the book explain why the divine attributes are not mere theological abstraction or speculative details reserved for academics. The way we understand God inevitably shapes the way we understand morality, the responsibility, the human person, and the very structure of reality himself. I seek to show that certain conceptions of God make freedom impossible, while others create the necessary framework for moral responsibility and authentic human agency. And a major emphasis of the volume is divine rationality, and in an age in which the will is often separate from the truth and morality, I argue that freedom cannot exist under an arbitrary God. If ultimate reality is pure force or will without reason, then concepts such as goodness, justice, and responsibility lose their meaning. And for this reason, I insist upon the classical idea of God as logos, the rational foundation of moral order and the intelligibility of the world. The book then explores a series of divine attributes that makes freedom possible. I discuss about divine goodness and the reason freedom cannot exist in a universe devoid of moral truthness. If God were unjust, or capricious, human responsibility would become absurd. In this context, I revisit the problem of evil, the distinction between permission and causation, and respond to the modern objection of the tyrannical God. I attempt to show that divine justice and divine love are not opposite, but inseparable realities. Another important chapter is devoted to the divine justice. Now, here I argue that freedom without moral order is merely an illusion. Responsibility presupposes the existence of real goodness and an objective moral structure. At the same time, I seek to clarify the difference between governance and manipulation. Divine sovereignty must not be confused with mechanical determinism. The volume then addresses the problem of divine knowledge and its relationship to human freedom. And I revisit one of the most common apologetic confusion, the idea that if God knows an event, then he caused it. And I attempt to explain it in an accessible way, the distinction between knowledge and causation, between foreknowledge and fatalism, without reducing the discussion to the inaccessible philosophical jargon. In the central portion of the book, I explored the relational divine attributes, God's relationality, authority, faithfulness, and transcendence. One essential point I attempt to develop is that authentic freedom does not exist in opposition to divine authority, but within the order created by God. Modern culture often identifies authority with domination and control. Yet I argue that it is precisely the moral structure and order provided by God that makes meaningful human agency possible. I also discuss divine omnipresence and omnipotence in a way that differs from many common approaches. And I attempt to show that God omnipresent does not mean oppressive surveillance, and that omnipotence should not be understood as a brute coercive force. On the contrary, true divine power is the power that creates space for existence, responsibility, and relationship. And in the final section, I synthesize the book's overall arguments and identify several common apologetic errors that students and defenders of the faith must avoid. Over philosophizing, turning the divine attributes into ideological weapon, and defending freedom in the way that distort the character of God. Through this volume, I seek to demonstrate that human freedom cannot be properly defended without a coherent vision of the divine nature. The divine attributes that make freedom possible, it's an invitation to rediscover the God of classical theism, not as a revival to human freedom, but as the very foundation that makes freedom, responsibility, and meaning possible. This book, it's possible on Amazon, Google Books, and Apple Books, and I have to repeat myself, telling you that everything that I'm writing is aimed for my Romanian students and building up the future defenders of faith in Romania. And because of my really limitations, I mean, they are way up there. You know, my limitation of writing Romanian is up there. And I have to write in English because my thought and my life has been in the United States. My schools and everything was over here. I came to America when I was only 21 years old. So my ability to explain in Romania is much limited with the limited vocabulary. So I'm writing in English for my students, and I can say that by God's mercy, the first two volumes have been already translated, and this one over here that just came out is in the process of being translated. And at the same time, I'm working on the fourth volume and the last volume from this series that is gonna be quite interesting. Thank you for listening for this short presentation.